CHAPTER V of the Giant Killer, or the Battle which All Must Fight, by Charlotte Maria Tucker. Recording by Lynne Thompson. CHAPTER V. Giant Untruth. Fides now prepared to depart from the scene of his fall, and also the scene of his victory. Leaving pleasure in the hands of conscience, he only asked his bright friend what new achievement demanded his efforts now. "Giant Untruth must at once be attacked," she replied. "He is one of the most dangerous of thy foes, from the strange enchantments which he uses. One stroke will not lay him low. He bears a charmed life, and thrice must he feel thy sword ere it has power to destroy him. A giant though he be, he can shrink to a shape as small as that of the tiniest dwarf, and so remain concealed and unnoticed till his pursuer passes by, and then, resuming his own form, strike at his foe unawares." "A hard task is before me," said Fides. "How shall I find out an enemy who hides himself thus? How discover him in his secret haunts?" "Hold up thy glittering sword on passing any suspected place. If no untruth lurks there, no change will be seen. But if the shadow of the blade falls near the false one, a dark shade will appear on the object that conceals him. Strike then, strike boldly, and untruth will fall." A few more words of counsel from his friend, and the champion departed on his way. Seen from a distance, the castle of Untruth appeared like a lordly palace. On near approach it showed like a poor–house. What had seemed marble was now seen to be but painted lath. The stately turrets were nothing but a deceptive wall. The large mullioned windows were false ones, admitting no air and no light. The very bolts on the door only seemed to be iron. They gave way to the first stroke of the sword. But if the outside of the castle of Untruth was so mean, far more so was the dwelling within. No beam of day ever struggled into that place. Bats hung from the rafters above. Damp trickled down the green, unwholesome walls. The trail of the serpent was upon the floor, and the yellow glare of sickly torches rather dazzled the eyes than guided the footsteps of the stranger. Where is there upon earth a lower, baser spot than that where Untruth has fixed his abode? Fides proceeded along a narrow, crooked gallery called Fear, which occupied a great part of the dwelling. Through this gallery the giant received countless victims, who, lost in its dreary mazes, groped their way into the presence of the destroyer. Perhaps Conscience, unseen, guided her champion now, for he neither stumbled over the obstacles that lay in his narrow path, nor struck his helmet against the low roof, which seemed ready to fall in, nor miss his way in the labyrinth of Fear. Just as the gallery ended, in a large dimly lighted room, Fides caught glimpse of the giant before him. Never had he seen anything so hateful to the eye, so repulsive to the generous soul. None of his race was more hideous than Giant Untruth. Meanness, cowardice, and cunning were stamped upon his brow. He looked like one who would shrink from the light. For a moment Fides beheld the giant, then, as if by magic, Untruth vanished from his eyes, and the knight found himself, as it appeared, alone, to pursue his search after his artful foe. There were many strange objects in that hall, not one of which, when closely examined, looked the same as it did when at a distance. Treasures of plate, golden vases, candelabra of the same precious metal, proved to be nothing but gilded tin. Imitation jewels gave a mock splendor to the place, and the tables were heaped with glittering coins, which were only made to deceive. Fides, however, amid so much that engaged his attention, was resolved not to forget his first important object, to hunt out Untruth wherever he might lie hidden. At one end of the hall the knight's eye was struck by a very large and handsome mask that rested against the wall. The features wore a smiling expression, the complexion was of a beautiful white. Fides fancied — was it only a fancy? — that through the eye holes of the huge mask he saw something moving behind. Straightway he approached it with his wondrous sword. Even as its shadow fell on the false face a dull stain appeared in the whiteness of its brow. Down came the blow, so heavy and so sure, that the mask in a moment was cleft in twain, and Untruth, receiving his first wound, rushed forth from his hiding place and vanished. This success made Fides more eager in pursuit. With rapid step he moved from place to place, examining this, glancing under that, keeping sharp watch like a good champion as he was. Now a heap of dresses thrown loosely together in a corner excited the suspicion of the knight. Amongst them was one cloak of white fur, lined with black, whose massive folds might conceal the enemy. The test of the sword was applied to this. Darkness gathered on the whiteness of the fur. Its hue grew like that of the lining within. Again down came the stroke. Again the traitor felt its power, and fled to hide for the last time from the invincible sword. Fides pursued his search till he was weary, and inclined to rest content with the success which he already had gained. He had examined every spot, as he believed, again and again, had paced through the length and breadth of the hall. Was it not possible that Untruth was already slain? He wished to believe this, and yet felt a doubt in his mind, which prevented him from resting at ease. He sprang up from a heap of cushions on which he had been reclining, determined to pause no more in his search till the enemy should be found. Thrice he passed along the hall, thrice examined the gallery of fear, then returned to the hall disappointed, but not altogether discouraged. Amongst the curious furniture of the place was a mirror, which possessed the property of magnifying every object before it. It was set so close to the wall that there appeared to be room for nothing behind it, and thus it aroused no suspicion in Fides. Viewed in this mirror, a dwarf could swell to a giant, the smallest thing appeared large, the meanest became great. It at once magnified and distorted. Fides stood still for a moment to look at his image in it, and smiled at his own stately height, and the size of the arm which he raised. "What a mighty sword will mine appear magnified thus!" he exclaimed, as he turned the clear blade towards the mirror. But scarcely had its reflection appeared upon the glass, when Fides started to behold the gathering stain which dimmed all the lustre of the crystal. Collecting all his strength for a final blow, Fides dashed his good sword against the surface, shivered the false mirror into 1,000 pieces, and slew the enchanter, who, in his narrow recess behind, had been laughing at the vain attempts to discover him. Such was the end of Untruth. End of chapter 5.